basically, right before we get to the locust, the eighth plague, I wanted to read something about the plague before this that I don't think I got a chance to read about, but the hail and the fire and all that came down, it obviously got Pharaoh's attention. And I wanted to read this. A storm of this magnitude would have been frightening to people anywhere, but it would have been especially terrifying to the people of Egypt because it rained so rarely there. Egypt is surrounded by desert on three sides, with the fourth side reaching to the Mediterranean Sea. It almost never rains in the southern Nile Delta, that part called Upper Egypt. And there are only about 8 inches of rain per year in the delta located on the shores of the Mediterranean. In comparison, Alabama gets an average of 50 inches of rain a year. And so by now, after that last plague of hail, by now the Egyptians are taking heed to Moses' word, and they took the precautions called for. You remember, it said if you fear God, you will get your servants and your livestock out of the field. If you don't regard Him, you just leave them out there. The Egyptians are taking heed to Moses' word, and they took precautions called for. First, the magicians recognized the power came from God. Now it is the officials of Pharaoh who hear the warning and take heed. But Pharaoh himself is too stubborn to see the evidence before him. At the close of this plague of hail, the inspired historian says that Pharaoh sinned yet more and hardened his heart, he and his servants. In the next plague that we're going to get to, even the servants of Pharaoh beg him to give up his opposition to the will of God and let the Israelites go. And so that's where we are here. We're in the next plague. And if you would turn to Exodus chapter 10, and I'll read the first 4 verses there, 10, 1 through 4. Then the Lord, Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine before him, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and your son's son the mighty things I have done in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord." So Moses and Aaron came in to Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says the Lord God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory." And so he's given a warning. And again, as we just read about the hail, it's got his attention, but then he hardened his heart. And it's like, as we mentioned before, when the trouble's happening, he's acting one way, and then when it's over, well, we made it through that, and then he seems to go right back to where he was. So in Exodus 10 and verse 5, "And they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail. You shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field." And so you can imagine that this isn't going to be a natural swarm. This is something that God has prepared that's going to tremendous damage. "And they shall fill thy houses and the houses of all thy servants and the houses of the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were upon the earth until this day." And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh. So he warns him, and then he leaves. And so, and Pharaoh's servants said to him, "How long shall this man be a snare unto us? Let these men go, that they may serve the Lord their God. Knowest thou not yet that Egypt is destroyed?" And think about that. With all the things that Egypt has endured at this point, things aren't looking good for Egypt right now, are they? I mean, it's kind of like things are, it's scary to think, when you're going through tough times, and you make it through the day, and then you think, what's going to happen tomorrow? Can I make it through tomorrow? And you got to imagine that, with all these waves of things that are coming through, they get it. Do you not know that Egypt is destroyed? So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh. So he calls them back. And he said to them, go serve the Lord your God, but which ones are to go? And Moses said, we will go with our young and our old. We will go with our sons and our daughters and with our flocks and herds, for we must hold a feast to the Lord. But he said to them, the Lord be with you if ever I let you or your little ones go. Look, you have some evil purpose in mind. No, go, the men among you, and serve the Lord, for that is what you were asking. And they were driven from Pharaoh's presence. In the New King James, 10 and verse 9. This is Hebrews 10:10. Then he said, the Lord had better be with you when I let you go, and your little ones. Beware, for evil is ahead of you. So, the idea is he only wanted to let the men go. So he's making another compromise, and that's not going to do. There's no compromise that can be done. In Exodus 10:12-15. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come up upon the land of Egypt and eat every herb of the land, all that the hail has left. So Moses stretched out his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord brought an east wind on the land all that day and all that night. When it was morning, the east wind brought the locusts. And the locusts went up over all the land of Egypt and rested on all the territory of Egypt. They were very severe. Previously there had been no such locusts as they, nor shall there be such after them. For they covered the face of the whole earth, so that the land was darkened, and they ate every herb of the land and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left. So there remained nothing green on the trees or on the plants or of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And what's interesting about this one, one of the things that Bob points out here, and I'll go ahead and read this here. The text does not tell us whether the locusts destroyed the crops in Goshen. It would be consistent with God to have spared them at this time also, but the Israelites will soon be leaving the land, so the destruction of their crops would not affect them. It may be that their crops were destroyed also, so that the whole land of Egypt would be barren when they finally let the Israelites go. So we don't know if there's a distinction made in this one or not. There could be. It would be, as he pointed out, it would be significant. Are consistent with that, and it would be significant to say the locusts are here, but they're not over here. There's no question this is God. And back up in verse 10 and verse 2, he points out that the New American Standard adds the phrase, "How I made a mockery of the Egyptians." That is the significance of God's words here. Tell your son and your grandson what I did to the Egyptians. Tell what I wrought upon Egypt, the signs I gave. Tell them how completely I defeated them. So God is, in essence, to a degree, he's destroying Egypt. I mean, he's not going to completely, if he wanted to destroy Egypt, there's no question he could do that. But he's doing this. He has a purpose in mind. And I think we've already touched on that, some of the reasons. And I think it was Chris that brought up last time about how the people outside of this area are hearing about this, and we'll see down the road where they will actually this is it's making an impression obviously on the Egyptians, should be on the Hebrews. Their faith should be so solid. And their trust in God that it can't be. You would think that it couldn't be shaken. And again, that will be down the road. We'll see that. But there are those outside this area that and to us today, this is. I wasn't there, but I have no doubt this is exactly by faith we see this and we know God's power was at work here, and He did. This happened exactly as we read about. Any thoughts or questions on that before I move on? Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste, and he said, I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore forgive, I pray thee, my sin only this once, and entreat the Lord your God that he may take away from me this death only. And notice how he prays it, this death. It's like if they stick around, nothing's going to be left. And he went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord, and the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts and cast them into the Red Sea. There remained not one locust in all the coast of Egypt. Now think about that. They're everywhere. You can't get away from them. And then after this, we can't find a one. Not one locust remained in all the coast of Egypt. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go. And so the thing is, now comes the next plague, and the plague of darkness. The Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over all the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. Darkness which may be felt literally, and one shall feel or grasp darkness. The hyperbole is no doubt extreme, but the general sentiment of mankind has approved the phrase, which exactly expresses what men feel in absolute and complete darkness. And let me ask y'all, have y'all ever been in complete darkness? I mean, no light whatsoever. Yes.
Close went to like a gold mine,
Yeah.
turn the lights off.
That's pretty dark, yeah. And people who've been in coal mines, I've heard that it's dark down there. Yes, Jeff.
I remember when I was a kid, my uncle and my dad had a coal mine.
Oh, wow.
They worked
Yeah.
together. And my uncle carried me in that thing, and they had carbide lamps on their head that run off a carbide.
Uh-huh.
He got me up in there, and I don't know, I was probably 12 years old, but he turned that thing off. And I remember how dark that was. And I grabbed hold of his clothes, I can't remember, but I was not gonna turn loose.
You could feel the darkness.
You really could. So I assume that may be what,
Yeah.
something similar to that.
And as we'll see as we get into that, while the lights run, you see everything, the light go out, and there's complete darkness. You don't think the same way. All of a sudden now, if you hear a noise, you automatically, things, the situation changes, and fear takes over. But you'll always remember that, I'm sure. Darkness so thick you could feel it. Oh, yes.
There was just a follow-up to what we just heard. You grabbed hold of your uncle's clothes. God is light.
Mm-hmm.
And Egypt was left in darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I think in some way, in some form or fashion, God removed his presence
Mm-hmm.
from Egypt. And that must have been the loneliest feeling in the world.
Well, what's interesting? There's so many things we take for granted. Air that we breathe, and that's mentioned in prayers from time to time. Things that we don't give thought to. Light, Can you imagine? We take it for granted. Well, there's going to be light. Yes.
Well, even people in the world who don't follow God's law or don't have a particularly affection for God know that God exists.
Mm-hmm.
They know he's around them. They just don't respect him and don't honor him and don't want to follow his word, but they know he's there.
And think about the blessings that we get that we just, go right on through like, again, I think that's something that as God's people, we should, when, reading this, hopefully that gives us a different perspective to look at things like light is a blessing. Wow.
Even Pharaoh and his servants and the people of Egypt knew God existed by this point.
Oh, they had to. They had to.
All of a sudden, there's complete darkness, so dark you can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think God removed his presence from all of Egypt.
And,
You
and
left the light on in Goshen now.
yeah, exactly. And that's going to make it even more impressive, if you will. He can do that. He can darkness, and there can be light in a very close proximity of, but but he doesn't mix the two, as it were. So it's and usually you think you got to have one or the other. All the lights got to be off, or if the lights are on, But again, that's what makes this miracle so unique and terrifying, I guess you could say, because God, he has that kind of control, and he's going to make an impression. Whatever secondary means were employed in producing it, whether thick, clammy fogs or vapors, according to some, a sandstorm according to others, it was such that it could almost be perceived by the organs of touch, and so protracted as to continue for 3 days. The appalling character of this calamity consisted in this, that the sun was the object of their Egyptian idolatry, that the pure and serene sky, that the country, was never marred by the appearance of a cloud. And so that gets right to the heart of, Egypt, the sun. They worship Ra, and, think, well, hey, we always can count on the sun being there. And now they find out God can control that. He takes the very core of, I guess, their idolatry, what they put their trust in. And, you would think it should have had a tremendous impact on them and in their perception. Wow, just saying. Observe particularly concerning this plague that it was total darkness. We have reason to think that not only that the lights of heaven were clouded, but that all their fires and candles were put out by damps or clammy vapors, which were the cause of this darkness. For it is said they saw no one, they saw not one another. It continued 3 days. And then it says 6 nights and 1. And I thought about that, and I thought, why do they put that like that? But I think we normally think of day, night, day, night, day, night. It'd be night, 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 that kind of thing. So, to have it like that. So long as they were imprisoned by those chains of darkness, and the most lightsome palaces were perfect dungeons. So the point is, for 3 days, and that we think, well, just 3 days. Go without light for 3 days, or I'm just saying, it would have had an impact on them, for sure. Any thoughts or yes?
I was going to say, you mentioned this was kind of a slap in the face to the gods, as it were. We'll get to a passage in chapter 12 about that. But even Pharaoh was believed to be the quote-unquote son of a god, of Ra. So there seems to be kind of this escalation of, if you haven't believed up until now, and each time Moses has said, the Lord is going to do this, the Lord is going to do this, the Lord. And now this is more like a personal attack on Pharaoh, maybe even perhaps, of his deity and his power. He is powerless.
Well, and like you say, and like I said, that gets right to the heart of, when you take away that, like, how can you remove the sun? Well, God can do that. I mean, to have darkness over the land so the sun doesn't shine, and they are literally in that kind of darkness, like I think like Judd was in, like in that so dark you could feel it. I mean, and it really it can be a terrifying thing. The cloud of locusts which had darkened the land was nothing to this. The tradition of the Jews is that in this darkness they were terrified by the apparitions of evil spirits, or rather by dreadful sounds and murmurs, which were no less frightful by the horrors of their own consciences. So the point is that in this total darkness, I mean, when things, at night, when you're laying down and lights are off and you hear a noise, it may, if you wake up, if you're kind of, awake and you hear a noise, it gets your attention. You're like, what's going on? Well, you just kind of, in the darkness, we kind of think of it differently. Now, if during the day and something happens, oh, okay, no, everything's fine. But at night, it can be scary. And you imagine this situation, we can't find light. They saw not one another, neither rose from their place for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. And again, we don't know how God accomplished that. He doesn't go into detail. It doesn't tell us, doesn't let us know. But again, this got Pharaoh's attention. Then Pharaoh called Moses and said, "Go serve the Lord your God. Go serve the Lord. Your little ones also may go with you. Only let your flocks and your herds remain behind." And Moses said, "You must let us have sacrifices and burnt offerings that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock must go with us, not a hoof will be left behind, for we must take them to serve the Lord our God, and we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we arrive there." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. Then Pharaoh said to them, "Get away from me. Take care you never see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die." And Moses said, "As you say, I will not see your face again." So Moses is still in the presence of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's telling him that we won't have another meeting, because if you know, it makes me wonder if he's like, this needs to stop. You know, you come to me and tell me about this stuff, give me a warning or something happens. But if you come in my presence again, you know, it's almost like he's saying, I know what I'm going to do to take care of the situation. Yes.
It kind of looks like Pharaoh's trying to negotiate with God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because every time the plague passes, he makes a little bit of a concession.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
God is not going to take anything except that he let his children go with their wives, their children, their animals in.
Mm-hmm.
But Pharaoh thinks he can negotiate God back a little bit on this command.
That he has some place, that he's at some kind of equal level there that he like you say, he can negotiate, and he can't. And in fact, I think we'll, as you mentioned that, we'll take time to notice what Pharaoh said, or the compromises Pharaoh made during these first 9 plagues. The frogs, he said, "Pray to God to take away the frogs, and I will let the people go to offer their sacrifices." The frogs left, but Pharaoh broke his word. He didn't do it. And if you remember, Moses even told Pharaoh, said, "You have the honor of saying when this plague will end." You know, and he could have said anything. He said tomorrow, and it did. Then we have the flies. He told them to go sacrifice to God right there in the land, but that would not work, because the Israelites would be offering sacrifices that would have been an abomination to the Egyptians. Again, another compromise. No, you can't go anywhere. You stay here. And whatever the abominations would have been, Moses knew, and I mean, you know, we can speculate, but that's not what God said either, you know, because if Moses said, "Oh, sure, we'll do it," no, that would have been Moses would be changing up what God said. He told them to go 3 days journey into the wilderness. After Moses rejected the compromise, and this is about the flies again, rejected the compromise that they offered in the land, Pharaoh said he would let them go, but not very far. But when the flies were gone, again, he broke his word. He wasn't going to let them go. Then we see the hail. Pharaoh was frightened. He said, "I have sinned. Pray to the Lord, and I will let you go. You do not have to stay any longer." But when the plague was over, he broke his word again. He didn't want to do it. The locusts. After being warned the locusts would come, Pharaoh's officers insisted that he let the people go. So he made this compromise, only let the men go, leaving the wives and children behind. In this way, Pharaoh could be assured that the men would return. Moses refused to leave anyone or anything behind. Moses and Aaron were driven out of Pharaoh's presence in anger. After the locusts came, Pharaoh said again, "I have sinned, pray for me." But when the locusts were gone, he refused to let the people go. Now we see the darkness. Pharaoh said, go take your people with you, but leave your animals behind. Moses refused because he could not know specifically what Jehovah would require in their sacrifices until they were ready to offer them. Moses stated again that he would leave nothing behind, not a hoof will be left behind. Pharaoh ordered them from his presence and threatened to kill them if he saw them again. And so that's, but before Moses leaves, God had already spoken to Moses. And the Lord said unto Moses, yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward he will let you go. Hence, when he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out. He shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. Why do you think the people were so favored among the Egyptians? You think there might be a practical reason for that?
They've seen the Lord in action.
They had respect. Fear. It's like, before, you think back, they probably looked down on them. They're just servants, just whatever, and we're Egyptians. And now things are starting to change. And now when the Hebrews or the Israelites start asking for things, they're like, sure, whatever you want. You want it, you got it. And they're going to actually, as it were, plunder Egypt, as it were, and we'll see that. Then we see the death of the firstborn in Exodus 11:4-8, and I'll read that. Then Moses said, and he's telling Pharaoh. Then Moses said, thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the female servant who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the animals. And I guess I should have stopped. Oh, no, I'm reading through 8, sorry. Then there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as was not like it before, nor shall be like it again. But against none of the children of Israel shall a dog move its tongue against man or beast, that you may know that the Lord does make a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And all these your servants shall come down to me and bow down to me, saying, get out, and all the people who follow you. After that I will go out. Then he went out from Pharaoh in great anger. So now he leaves in great anger. You understand why? Because Moses said, speaking here to Pharaoh before the event, if the king was not so stubborn, this plague and its horror could have been avoided. So I think Moses is looking at it like that, like, you still don't get it. You haven't connected the dots yet. You still haven't filled in the blanks like you should have to know that God is in charge here. And so, but Pharaoh's stubborn, but God knew that. God knew the kind of heart that Pharaoh had, and it fit into God's purpose. All the firstborn in the land, and the eldest son, and it's a masculine noun. So you might get the sense it would be every firstborn, but it's just males. Refers to each firstborn male. Now the dog shall move his tongue. And so, and so you see that this proverbial expression that the Israelites would not only be free from death, but that they would depart without any molestation. Even the dogs would not bark at them. And so God is showing that there is a difference. And if you look at it, I think the Egyptians fear them. They fear God, obviously, but these are God's people. And so it's like the fear is upon them as well, that these people. Hey, you don't want to do anything against these folks. And then we see, burning with anger, Moses left Pharaoh, indignant at his stubbornness, irreverence, and folly. And it mentions 1 Samuel 20 and 34 there, and that's where David and Jonathan, David knows that King Saul wants to kill him, but Jonathan is, not so sure, and he finds out that's exactly the way that it is. In fact, Saul throws a spear at his own son, Jonathan, and it said Jonathan arose in fierce anger, and they were at having the feast, and he didn't even eat the second day, from my understanding. And so the point of it is, in certain situations, especially when you see things that it's just really, and you have that kind of anger. And I think the anger Moses had here was absolutely correct. Is how can you let this happen? It doesn't have to, but that's and we live in a world with people that do things. It's like, what are you doing? Why would you? I'm just saying. It's just one of those things. Stubborn people, and they do things that can anger you. Any thoughts? Yes, Barry.
Perhaps there's a good example here of what we see explained to us in the New Testament about our sorrow, the godly sorrow and worldly sorrow.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Pharaoh having said a couple of times that I've sinned here, I'm sorry if this is happening. But really, in terms of this, he goes back and goes back on it the way he was.
Mm-hmm.
And something that when we realize that we have sinned against God, we need to maybe make sure that our sorrow is godly sorrow. We just don't say it in our heart, that's all we've done, we said it, or we could even maybe a little step further say it in front of a bunch of people, but really don't do anything about it.
It's not coming from the heart.
We're not really changing.
Exactly.
Verbalize it, but we're not really living it, we're not changing.
We're just going through the motions, as it were.
It seems like Pharaoh's got an example of that. God wants us. He wants our heart. Not just our actions and stuff to be, maybe outward appearance of something. It's that internal thing. He wants. You talk about fear too was something else. I mean, the Egyptians apparently were scared.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes in the word fear, I think sometimes in the scripture, I don't know what it necessarily means scared, but it also means reverence to God.
Mm-hmm.
Realize who God is and change because of that. And I think these people might have been scared and not necessarily having that kind of fear. They were fearful in one way, but not fearful in that way.
Like fearful, I want to save my own neck kind of thing. As long as it doesn't hurt me, if I can make it through this, and
Right.
yeah.
Right. Not really making that change.
The change that needs to be, if you're going to be what you should be. Well, you bring up a good point in the fact that, and Pharaoh says those things like, pray for me. We're going to see where he says, bless me. And those little things that he says there, which shows that he understands, he gets it. But, and to me, it's almost about me now, pray for me, and bless me.
I'm saying, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. It's not uncommon
Yeah,
for us to not be that way ourselves.
yeah.
To really say,
It's
okay,
about me.
I'm sorry, Mama, I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
I'm really not going to change. You said,
Right,
I'm gonna go back down a little lower in the voice.
Unless I get caught again. Yeah, and that's something, again, when you read through here, there's so much depth here. We can pass over it, but there's so much depth that it can help us to be better people. When you look back at this and like, what can I learn from this? A lot, a whole lot. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of his land. And now we got to remember God does not force anyone to do wrong. And that's James 1 says, when people are tempted, don't say I'm tempted of God, because God cannot be tempted with good or evil, neither tempts he any man. And so, that idea is, we want to blame it. I think they wouldn't be surprised if people blame stuff. Well, God, what's the thing people used to say? The devil made me do it. If you do something foolish and the devil made me, like I didn't have anything to do with it. And I guess people could, say, Pharaoh, God's making me this way. No, no. God does not force anyone to do wrong. Proud men are repelled by God's demand for submission, but the reaction is their choice. And that's exactly right. That's exactly what you're seeing here. You could easily get this idea that God is just like a puppet master, and he, Pharaoh's going to do exactly what he tells him to do, because Pharaoh has no. Pharaoh has free will, and he can choose. Point here is that in the big picture, even the stubborn can serve in God's purpose, and obviously Judas Iscariot. So you get the sense that that's one thing I hope we get it. Because some people could look at this and just go away with the wrong idea. And I firmly believe God's word is that way, where if you want to run off the wrong way, you can. But if your heart's what it should be and it's honest and you're looking, for truth, it's there. Any thoughts on that before we move on? If not, okay. So, and the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months, and it shall be the first month of the year for you. So it's a renewal, things, a beginning for them. And then obviously, we see in their on the Jewish calendar, their Jewish feast. Obviously Passover was in the we see when the first month in Nisan, and unleavened bread, first fruits. Pentecost where it falls. Trumpets. The seventh month down there, atonement. Then it's got like Purim. Thinking about Esther and that situation, and then Hanukkah obviously later. That kind of thing. So, you see how things, we don't have time to really go into any detail. We're almost at the end of our time today. So let me go ahead and speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, In the 10th day of this month ye shall take to them every man a lamb according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of souls of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out of from the sheep or from the goats. So basically, you could have a lamb, or I guess they call. Is it kids? You call the goats, baby goats, kids. So it could be a lamb or a kid, if it's of the goats, from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And we pretty much have to call it there. So this is where we're going to pick up Wednesday, and then of course next Lord's Day we have the meeting. So.